This time we'll call the combined solid waste admin and finance meeting to order. The meeting properly announced.
Yes.
Okay, roll call. Let the record show that Bob Grubarski, Gordy Carlson, and John West are absent at this time. Need a motion to approve the agenda. Bruce and Ken. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Agenda is approved. Now we have a presentation by New Gen Strategies on the cost of service analysis down in the solid waste department.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to introduce Dave Yonke from New Gen Strategies and Solutions. He's the president, and again, he's going to be presenting on the cost of service analysis.
Okay, thank you. Dave, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's see, can I'll go ahead and share my screen if everybody's good with that. Let me get there. Okay. Can everyone see my PowerPoint?
No, not yet.
All right.
See, now we can't go.
Let's see. All right, can you see it now?
Yes, cover page.
Okay, let me get the full screen here. I don't know why. There we go. Okay. All right. I apologize. Can you see the full screen now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right. We'll get started then. Thank you. So just very quickly to give you an introduction to the firm, New Gen Strategy Solutions. We're a 50-person financial management consulting firm. All we focus on is the conduct of water, wastewater, solid waste, and electric cost of service studies, feasibility analyses, et cetera. So this is our bread and butter as to what we do. We're not an engineering firm or anything like that. And I'm out of our Austin, Texas office. So you know who's speaking to you, what's my background? I've been involved in the water, wastewater, solid waste area for 30 years now. I did my first solid waste cost of service study back in 1994. So my primary area of expertise is conducting cost of service and rate design studies, feasibility studies in the recycling area, operational reviews, et cetera. Just as a quick example, we just finished a very similar study that we're working on for you for the city of Janesville, Wisconsin, about 4 months ago. We worked with Superior, Wisconsin about 7 or 8 years ago on a cost of service study, landfill valuation, et cetera. So with regard to the cost of service methodology, what we were asked to do, or how you conduct a cost service study, the first thing is you develop a test year. We base that off your fiscal year or your solid waste budget. And with that, you develop a revenue requirement forecast, which I will define for you in just a minute or two. And then from there, you allocate the cost to all the different service categories. And this is the very important part where we allocate every frontline piece of equipment, whether it's an automated side loader garbage truck, rear loader, et cetera, and personnel to each specific service you provide. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. We determine the number of billing units, so whether it's customers, dumpsters, tons of garbage, a landfill, et cetera, to come up with the cost of service. The purpose of this study, the reason we were hired to conduct a comprehensive solid waste and recycling cost of service analysis. The goal of this was to help you look at what it would take to move towards cost-based rates. The goal being to wean the solid waste utility off tax revenues. I will just mention in our background and experience, your solid waste utility is set up as an enterprise fund, so it should be set up so it is self-sustaining, funded by rates from all the different customers, so that those people that place a burden or use that solid waste utility pay for the costs associated with the utility. And I'll get into more detail on that here in just a minute. So what is a revenue requirement? It's really very simple. We budget on a cash basis like city and county governments do. So we set your budget, and it's basically all your operating and maintenance expenses. So labor costs, fuel, vehicle maintenance, etc. And then it's vehicle replacement, funding equipment, whether it's on a cash basis, lease, debt service, and then capital improvement projects. So projects at the landfill, whether it's construction of a new cell, etc. And that all adds up to your annual revenue requirement. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this spreadsheet, but I think it is worth showing and showing you the basic process. So for instance, if we're looking at the top left, we have your rear load collection trucks. You have 6, cost approximately $400,000 a year, side loaders at $420 and a front loader at $464. What we do and how we do all of our cost of service studies, we look at that cost. So for instance, we'll take rear loader. You have 6 of them at $400,000 a year. That's $2.4 million. If they have a useful life of 10 years, you have to amortize or set aside $240,000 a year on a cash basis for all your frontline equipment. We're looking at frontline equipment. If you add all these up, so for instance, collection equipment, we're talking $546,000 a year. If you add it up for roll-off, recycling, and then over on the right side, the landfill operations, and then miscellaneous, the value is approximately amortized cost about $1.1 million a year. So what that means is you need to be budgeting and setting aside that cash so you can replace that equipment. I will tell you, a lot of our clients have seen significant rate increases. The cost of metal has gone up considerably. As you know, diesel fuel costs have gone up, but definitely on the equipment side, we've got folks that, give you an example, that compactor up there, top right, 2.2 million. 3-4 years ago, you were looking at about 1.6 to 1.8 million, depending on the size of the compactor. Those things have a lot of metal in them. Metal's gone up over 100% in the last 18 months. It's getting passed through from Caterpillar and the other folks. Bottom line, and there's a lot of analysis that goes into it, but once we take your budget, we factor in capital costs, all your operating costs, etc. The total cost for operating your utility for fiscal year 2023 is budgeted at about $5,354,000. It stays constant in FY 2024 at about the 5.3, and then grows modestly to 5.5 and 5.7 million. It drops to 5.2 million in FY 2027, and that is because you have a bond issue tied to the landfill and MRF that is rolling off. So that'll help reduce your capital expense, your total revenue requirement, which is a good thing. So bottom line, what we do, let me move this here. What we always do after we come up with the cost of service, we look at, okay, how much are we generating in revenue? So again, back here, I'm just going back. If you see down here, I said your revenue requirement, this is the cost to operate the system, O&M, capital, everything. It's around 5.3, 5.5, etc. So you come over here, you still have that same 5.3, 5.5, 5.7. That's your revenue requirement. That is the cost to operate your utility. Your current revenues you're generating from all your different fees, tipping fees, rear load fees, roll-off fees, residential fees, everything, your township contracts. It's about 4,448,000, grows very modestly, and that is only due to a very conservative assumption on customer growth. So bottom line, you're under recovering, you're projected to under recover $906,000 in FY 2023. That grows to about $1.2 million. It dips a little bit because that debt service rolls off in 2027. But on a cumulative basis, if you do nothing, you've got a cumulative under recovery of about 4.7 million. That shortfall is being made up by a large part, or in total, by your tax revenue transfer. So it's very important. This under recovery is before you add in the tax revenue subsidy. For instance, in 2023, you have a transfer coming in of about $655,000, which would reduce that under recovery to about $240,000. Okay. The goal when we work with our clients, and we work with small communities, City of Phoenix, Tucson, those are clients of ours, but we work with small communities. It doesn't matter how big they are. The goal that they always have is moving to be standalone, so everything is funded through user fees. So what I'm going to provide you on the next few slides is a series of recommendations to work towards getting to a cash flow standalone just through user fee basis. What we always tell our clients, usually when you get into a situation where you're under recovering, and we have a lot of clients that this is not uncommon what I'm looking at here. We have a lot of clients that get like that, especially during COVID when they didn't raise rates and what have you. It takes a while to get into an under recovery. It takes a while to work out in transition. What we are recommending is a series of rate increases to minimize rate shock, okay? We also understand you have some contracts in place, and so if you have a contract in place, for instance, with the township for automated side loaders, we know that you cannot set that contract aside, and we realize that. So what we're recommending, these are your cart customers that are not under a contract in a township. Given where the rates are, and we're looking at cost recovery, et cetera, your option one, which is your standard customer with a cart, we're recommending those rates stay unchanged at $38. Option two are the customers that have it picked up, it's in bags or what have you, that stays at $36. The one we would recommend you gradually increase is option three. That's for your smaller cart. We would recommend that increase $2 a year. So it's currently at $22 per month per household. We'd recommend that go to $24 in 2023, then to $26, $28, and then to $30. Most of our clients that have a differential between, say, a 95 and a 65 gallon cart, a $6, $8, $10 is the most you'll see as a differential to encourage recycling, especially for a system that's rural. To have a $16 difference is a huge difference. So they still get a significant difference. By 2027, they're still $8 less per month per household than a 95 gallon, but we would recommend that be increased. The landfill, let's talk about the landfill. You're currently at $62. You are considerably cheaper than any of the neighboring landfills. So you have a very attractive tipping fee. We would strongly recommend that tipping fee be increased from $62, the gate rate, to $66. And then in 2024, $69. And then finally in 2025, $72 and held constant. One of the things we always emphasize is when you're doing increases, these are market-based pricing. It's not like a water utility where you can set water rates and, your water customer doesn't have anywhere else to go. Someone in theory can take their garbage somewhere else. So we always recommend small incremental increases. Given where you are from a pricing standpoint and the market, you're the lowest in the market. Increasing, I feel very comfortable. You're going to be in good shape there. With regard to the Lenarude contract, it is very common for customers to have clients to have a put or pay contract. Large users get a discounted rate. I know sometimes people in the city or county will say, well, why are we giving a discount to someone to bring trash in from, say, outside city limits, or in your case, outside the county? One of the reasons you do that, and Lenarude's around 20,000 tons, so it's about 40% of your waste. Landfills are a very fixed cost business. And so if that waste goes away, your fixed costs really don't change. So there is a benefit to receiving that waste to keep your cost to operate down. However, that rate is very low and we would recommend it being increased. So it would go up to $48 in FY 2023, and then to $52, $56, $58, and then $60 in 2027. Right now, they get a discount of about $18, $44 versus $62. So you're narrowing that to an $8 discount. It's still an incredibly cheap rate in that market. I know that contract does not expire till 2023, but in discussions with them, they still would be getting a very good deal. We had some issues. We have dealt with issues like this for other clients, and they've done similar things. So I won't speak for Lenarude, but this is not uncommon to see adjustments like this. With regard to your roll-off rates, and I want to emphasize these are, I'll get to the township, the drop-off center polls on the next slide. These rates relate to if you're pulling a residential or commercial dumpster in the county or out of county. Again, the drop-off polls will be discussed on the next slide. So your current rates right now in county, 10, 20, 30, you can see are $200 and $225. We are recommending in FY 2023, those rates all be moved to $235 a pull. There is no difference in the level of effort, diesel, time, etc., spent to pull a 10 versus a 20 or a 30. It's very common in the industry. They're all charged the same rate for the pull. So we're recommending they go to $235 in 2023, and then another 2 years later in 2025, increase to $245. Similar with the out of county, move to a consistent rate, going from the $350 and $375 to $395, and then again in FY 2025, $415. Those rate increases are not too significant. On this side, we're looking at bigger increases because quite frankly, the rates that are being charged significantly under recover the cost to do these pulls. Let me focus first of all on those pulls that are not in blue. With regard to pulls, the practice is very common that there is a standard rate that is charged. For instance, if I'm working with a city, whether it's the city of Tucson or Mesquite, Texas, or wherever you are, they'll have standard pull rates that are charged, whether you're 3 miles from the landfill or 10 miles from the landfill. Quite frankly, over time, you have all these different rates that have been set up. Big Flats, 81.97, Colburn, Richfield, 91, Easton, $100.92. The rates are all over the board. This becomes also an administrative and billing. This is where you can increase the challenge or possibility of having billing errors, clarification, mistakes made. It is very common it is extremely common, and it's the practice, there's a standard pull rate. Now, I made an exception here in that we went and mapped the 3 here that are further out. Most of the ones that are not in blue are, generally speaking, about 6 to 15 miles from the landfill. New Haven, Quincy, Rome are further out in the 20 to 30 range. So we would recommend a 2-tier pull rate. So 1 standard rate for everyone that's within 15 miles, and then another pull rate for those that are further out. Quite frankly, the difference between if a pull is coming from 8 miles or 12 miles away in the big picture is a rounding error. So what we're recommending, FY 2023, the rates for all the customers be moved to $110 that are not in blue. Let me point a couple exceptions out. A Lincoln or Newchester, which are further away, and these rates have been set. We are not saying their rate should be lowered from 127.39 to 110. You're already under recovering, so don't compound the problem. So their rate would stay at 127.39. Newchester would stay at 131.42. In FY 2024, and you can see the trend, we have $15 increases across the board. When you get to Lincoln in FY 2024, they're at 127.39. So their rate's not going up, but it's staying there. Then in FY 2025, you can see Lincoln and Newchester both convert over to the standard $140. By FY 2027, everyone is at $170 with the exception of New Haven and Rome. And then when you get there, we tell you to relook at that and probably look at a $30 to $50 price differential for those polls. But right now, just gradually move everyone over so they're moving towards cost-based rates. And the final item, for your commercial customers, in county, out of county. And again, this is your carts that are picked up with rear load and your rear load dumpsters. So we are recommending on the garbage side for the 5 years, and those rates are significantly under recovering. So I've got to emphasize that significantly. We are recommending 10% annual increases on county and out of county garbage rates. Recycling, you're trying to encourage that. You don't have a disposal cost, you do have the processing fee. We're recommending a 3% annual increase. And then on the commercial, there's a one-time adjustment in FY 2023 that we showed at the far right. And then after that, they're going to the 3% annual increases. Just have a couple slides left here. Here's the key thing. If you put, and I know there are a lot of numbers, let me just walk through this. Again, if you look at the second line, this 5.3, 5.5, 5.7, and then again drops when the debt service rolls off. This second line, those are your costs. If you put these rate increases into effect, you're going to grow your revenues to 4.5 million, 4.8, 5, 5.2, a little over 5.3. What's that mean? Your under recovery, you're still going to under recover $776,000 in 2023. You're just starting the rate increases, but you can see your under recovery goes to 524,000, 456, 540, and then you're actually a positive cash flow operating fully 100% on user fees over a 5-year transition. That allows you to then wean off the tax revenue offset, the tax levy. Right now, you're at about 655 grand. Again, based on some of our capital, you still would be dipping into savings another 120 grand there unless you postpone. You may not even get that equipment right now because of the delays, but 655,000 covers you. You get down to needing 524,000 from tax levy 24. You hold constant for 2 years at 491, And see, in 27, you get the big benefit of a continued rate increase and that debt service rolling off, remember? So you are then positive, and you have a positive cash flow of 62,000 in 5 years from now. If I have one slide left, yeah. So next steps, and then I'll open it up for questions, comments. We would recommend strongly you move towards the cost of service based rate. This shows a methodology that allows you to transition over time. Secondly, the township contracts, and these are for the automated side loaders that you're collecting. As those expire, we would recommend they move towards closer to a cost-based cart rate. In the interim, every year you have the ability to raise those. Some of those have different CPI increase caps. I would increase those to the maximum you could every fiscal year. Third item, I know in talking with Charlie, they're looking at and have been working on some of the transitioning from rear loaders to automated side loaders for carts. We strongly encourage that, and that should lead to some potential operational efficiencies. To be clear, nothing that's going to be to the magnitude where you don't need these rate increases, but it will help to lower some of those costs potentially. And then finally, the key thing we mentioned, there are two things that our solid waste utilities, when we're hired to work with, they look at making sure the user fees allow them to be 100% self-sufficient on user fees, and also making sure that they have reserves built up. You basically have no reserves for this solid waste utility, and it is critical that they build up some reserves. If something happens, if you've got a problem at the landfill or what have you, you just have no margin of error. So that's part of the thing we'd recommend moving towards. That was a lot of information I went through quickly. I'm glad to take any questions that you have, and I will stop sharing my screen.
Okay, Bruce, you had a question?
You want the time? I have actually 4 questions.
Go for it.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
Dave, you talked at the beginning that annually for equipment, there should be 1.1 million. Is that part of the reserve buildup at the end of the conversation that you were talking about? Because I did not notice that in the first slide where you talked about revenue, the cost, where it was minus. I did not see that in there.
Yep.
Just kind of.
Yeah, let me put that up and go back there. It's a good question. That, and in fact, let me just get there first. Good question. Everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
That does not build up your reserves. This is being funded through cash, through the rates, through the proposed rate increases to fund these equipment needs. So that cash is used. So it does not establish a reserve at day one.
So in fact, your numbers of the 5.3 million, that included the 1.1 for the equipment?
That is correct.
Okay,
Yes.
very good. I didn't notice that in there. Thank you. What is a gate rate?
The gate rate right now is $62.
And what does that mean?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Sorry, I use terminology sometimes. Yeah, that is the rate that is charged, the tipping fee when you show up. If you're a private hauler or you're bringing garbage in, it's $62 per ton. You go across the scale, they weigh it, and that's what you have to pay when you drop it at the landfill.
Very good. Then you talked about a $200 charge for a pull on a dumpster.
Yes.
That's in addition to what the weight would be when that dumpster is brought back.
Yes, that's a very good question, and thank you. The way it's set up, it's very common in the industry, and that's how you do it. If you have one of those dumpsters, let's say I'm a contractor, or let's say I'm doing a remodel at my house, I rent a 10 cubic yard dumpster. and then it's filled up. I have it pulled. Let's say you're doing the $235. I pay $235. It goes across the scale. They will weigh it on the going in and coming out and say, Dave Yankee had 4 tons of garbage in there. And so I have to pay the $235 plus $62 times 4. So I think that's $248.
Okay, and then I have this question. How much out of county dumpsters do we do?
I don't know what that number is off the top of my head. We have it. I mean, I can get it pretty quickly for you.
But I mean, is it considerable? Is it just,
Not compared to in county, so no, not especially.
the reason I'm asking that question, in fact, if we're doing the out of county dumpster, why don't we charge a little bit more for that than we do the in county? So I think it'd be-
That, those numbers were in there. The out of county he's proposing $395, and the in county he's proposing $230.
I'm sorry, again, thank you very much. That should do it for my questions. Thank you.
A couple of my questions is, when I look at your first slide, I didn't see any cost of living increase or any type of increase for the worker. I would have thought maybe you put 2 to 4% in there for wage increases and or insurance. But I don't see that cost in there. Is that the way you would look at that?
We do have salary increases in our forecast. So you have them in. You just don't have a detailed schedule here in the PowerPoint that breaks out salaries. Salaries, for instance, are associated with refuse collection, recycling, all those. We do have salary increases in our forecast, just so you know. That's essential.
Okay. When you said that we should keep the 10-yard, the 20-yard, 30-yard, the same rate, I guess my question would be, why wouldn't everybody just, for cost sake, want a 30-yard one? Because nobody really knows how much they're ever going to dump. So why would it just better go to 30-yard rate and just cost that instead?
Very good question. Let me clarify. I probably should have put down here also, this is the cost of the pull plus the tonnage, the amount of waste at the disposal, tipping fee of $62. So for instance, if I am doing a project, the cost of the container to rent it, it's, to pull it is the same. But if you have a 30 cubic yard, you're going to most likely want a 30 cubic yard because you have more trash, and then you will pay because it's the $235 plus the amount of tonnage when it's weight going across the scale. So you pay for the disposal also. Is that, I apologize for any confusion. Does that make sense?
And I guess the way I look at it is, you could have only 10 yards worth of garbage and throw it in a 30-yard dumpster because the normal person doesn't know how much disposal they're going to have. And if the price is the same, I would order a 30-yard dump just to get on the safe side to make sure I'd have enough room instead of running on a 10 one and then have to bring back another 10. You see what I'm saying?
Right. But again, at the end of the day, the cost of the pull, the truck to drive out there, labor, diesel, all that, and to hook up and pull that container, the cost is the same. And then a 10 cubic yard does not hold as much. So if you have a 30 cubic yard and you have more tonnage, you will pay more. I mean, you're paying for every ton of garbage.
What about the Leonard contract? Should we continue with that? See, you said it was 40% of our current revenues. If we got rid of that, I guess I always worry about that we're going to fill up our landfill too fast. But that's essential to going to the black, correct?
Yeah, I'll be very clear right now. I would not recommend getting rid of the Leonard Rood contract. Right now, it is bringing in, just to give you an idea, right now, hold on, apologize. Yeah, right now, that contract's bringing in about $850,000 a year to the county, okay, towards the operation of the landfill. If that were to go away tomorrow, your costs don't drop by that amount, okay? And so you want to keep that contract, but you need to increase the price of it. There's always a balance. You want to offer a discount because it brings that waste in, but you want to keep that waste, but you've got to raise the discounted rate. I'll give you an example. We had a client in Irving, Texas, so where the Dallas Cowboys play. Don't worry, I'm a Green Bay Packer fan. I was born in Wisconsin, so but they have what are called put or pay contracts. It's basically, okay, you're getting a discounted rate, but if you don't use all of the contract, you still pay for it. So if I have a contract for 100,000 tons, but I only bring 80,000, I pay for 100,000 tons at the discounted rate. They had a 100,000 ton per year contract with Waste Connections, put or pay. The city asked us to look at that very same issue. Should we get rid of that contract to extend the life of the landfill? And that contract was like half of the tonnage coming into the city's landfill. The rates were going to go through the roof. I mean, it was going to add about $7 per month per household. And they were like, no, we don't want to do that. I'm not going to speak from an engineering standpoint, but from our conversations and what we've seen, you've got good good landfill life. There is that balance, but I would not, based on my experience and what we've seen other cities do also, I would not get rid of that Leonard Rood contract.
My last question is, you took a look at, obviously, all our employees. Do we have enough? Do we not have enough? Are we employed the way landfill should be employed at?
So to be clear, we did a cost of service and rate design study. We looked at breaking out the cost for all these services. We did come out and spend a day in the field to ride out to the drop-off center, see some of the townships, toured the landfill in detail, et cetera. We were not conducting an operations review. So I will not speak to you have enough staff, you have too many. I mean, I don't think you have too many, but I did not do an operations review.
Thank you.
Sure.
Bruce, anything else?
Yeah, this is really going to be nitpicking, but I have to go back to the dumpster, because when we think about it, if a 30-yard dumpster, it's got to weigh a lot more than a 10. And when it's filled, it's got to weigh a lot more than a 10-yard dumpster. So that fuel and any other of the toll costs are going to be larger for a 30, right? I mean, it just makes sense. I don't see, and this is not something, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Just to address that, so it's actually, the weight of the containers aren't, it's not that different. It's just maybe another 2-foot section raised up. I mean, a 10 and a 30 are a little bit, but when you're hauling it on a truck, you're not noticing that much. But to address kind of what you were saying before about everybody would just get a 30. Right now, our 20s and 30s are the same price. Like, that's how we operate it right now. And people do tend to choose the size that they need. Like, we're not having everybody take 30 yards if they don't think they need it. Okay. So I mean, just to address that, we don't really see that just because the 20s and 30s are the same. Everybody's choosing the 30s just to be safe. It happens, but we haven't come to a point where we're out basically because everybody's taking the same.
Okay.
That's all I can.
All right, thank you. You had something?
Yeah, I got a few questions here. The townships that are already contracted, what is their rate? How long is that gonna be?
The contracts we have, so they all are. Well, we have Coloma, Jackson, and the town of Adams. Those are all 10-year contracts that all started within the last probably year. And then we just signed a 5-year with the city of Adams. That started last week.
So they won't see any of these increases if we do decide to increase them.
They won't see, well, they won't see some of the, what we call the fixed costs, like their collection costs. They'll get the 3% annual increase. And others ones have, so it's just depending on how the contract was worded. Some of them have a 3% max increase every year, and others, actually, it's just based on the CPI, the Midwest Consumer Index, for what it is at a certain time of the year. So whenever that contract is up to renew, like August for some of them. So like this year it was 8%, so those contracts raised 8% for the next year. And then they will see the increase in the tipping fee because they see their tipping fees are not necessarily a contracted rate. It's what our gate rate is.
Thank you. My next one is, if nobody else wants to hop in here, a while back, me and I know my brother had dumpsters at our house. We didn't want to take our garbage to the transfer site. I live about 8 to 10 miles away from the transfer site, so it's easier for me to walk out my front door and put my garbage in to my dumpster. They came and pulled them all at once, and they said it was for liability reasons. What is the suggestion? Should have we kept them? Because I was not only paying my taxes for my tipping fee, I was also paying a tax out of our pockets, and I think there was quite a few of those around the county.
I mean, that did all happen, I guess, before anybody really working there now still works there. But from an operational standpoint, we are happy with, I guess, not having the dumpsters in everybody's driveway and pulling in every single person's driveway to empty the dumpsters that they have.
Mr. Chair,
To me, it sounds like another form of income. I mean, how much income did we lose over that?
I guess I'd have to look back. I don't actually think it was that much because we did gain. I mean, we gained significant amount of people signing up for just the curbside service where they're getting picked up every single week, every other week recycling. And it's increased over the last 3 years since that program. And since we got rid of the individual, you're talking like the 1 yard and the 2 yard small dumpster in your yard.
If your truck is going past those people's houses, I know there's side dumpsters. Why couldn't they also pick up the dumpsters?
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm not sure what you're.
Well, you're going, they also said it was a mileage issue. You're going past those houses anyway. Is it because of the convenience of the sidecars that are picking up those, that you couldn't pick up the rear dumpsters?
Well, I mean, the trucks don't, the trucks that pick up the side, like the side aren't made to pick up dumpsters. They can't do both. So yeah, it is an incredible speed savings, fuel savings, safety without the guy jumping in and out of the truck. And yeah, like I said, that program ended before I started or Cynthia started, and I don't see us going back to that though.
Do you have any other questions on the presentation?
I got a couple more. Did you look at, maybe you answered this with Rick's question, did you look at all the routes? I mean, can we combine some of these routes?
Yeah, to be clear, we did not do a operations routing study. When we do those types of things, that was not the scope of this. This was to look at what it costs to operate this utility. What we did do was look at equipment and what are industry standards for useful lives, because that is critical to make sure you maintain your equipment and you're not driving 20-year-old trucks, because the maintenance costs on those things You know, it's not like driving a 20-year-old Suburban. You can do those and have TLC at home with those. The garbage trucks, the costs go through the roof. But back to your question, we did not go out and ride all the routes.
I just think that that was part of what we thought was gonna happen. I guess, I was misled.
Mr. Chair. So internally, we are doing that, and we have done that throughout this whole past year. Where we are actually at a point where we did lose a couple drivers and we're hiring one back, but not two, because we have been able to optimize some of these routes. It's a long process, but we are doing that. I mean, we are able to take 2 routes and combine them down to, or 3 routes, combine them down to 2. Moving these contractors, getting these townships all to the sidearm has eliminated the need for some of our jumpers. So we have more drivers available to kind of expand some of our services as well. So internally, it is what we're doing. But to get us out of like the hole we're in, this study that NewGen did was more gonna take these big changes. Operationally, we can do some of these things, but we're not gonna be saving like massive dollar amounts once we do that. But we are working.
Thank you. Just one more if I can. That goes back to the recycling. Was any of that looked at as far as cost versus, income?
So we did look at the MRF operations. I will tell you, your costs for operating that MRF are very low. Especially with debt service, when the debt service rolls off, the cost of that operation drops considerably. And as far as, you know, what you're getting from it, I think your MRF is well run. And given the markets where you're located, because transportation costs are one of your biggest challenges, I think your recycling program's really running well when I look at the costs versus the revenues generated.
Thank you. That's all I had. Thank you guys for the answers.
Hey, Jerry?
Okay, well, Rick just asked my question. I mean, I was concerned also there was nothing said about the recycle center. But I am somewhat disappointed with the conclusion and the analysis, the cost analysis. I thought we were getting a study at where our expenses were and how to cut expenses also. I did not realize it was just a study on how to increase rates.
Well,
I guess I don't well, first, the proposal that we presented to everyone a couple months ago had all this laid out. And our expenses, our budgets are so thin and small. I don't know what we are, I guess, expected to cut expenses on. And I thought our main goal was to get off the tax levy, and this study laid out a pretty clear roadmap of how we can do that.
Anybody else?
if I can add, I would like to add to that. One thing, while we did not do an operational study to go out, time, motion, and all that, I will tell you, for a utility your size, you have approximately 20 staff and some contract labor at the MRF. You have a lean operation. It's not something where you've got a lot of people sitting around. You only have 3 people operating at the landfill. I've seen landfills that size have double that amount. So I will just tell you, from a labor standpoint, you are not looking fat. I can just tell you that.
Anybody else? Bruce?
Just one more, please. And I don't know if you can answer this. You made a comment about buying a piece of equipment that steel is up to make a dump truck or whatever, that the cost has gone up because steel has gone up. Do you see that happening in our recycling? Are we getting better prices now for steel and the various recycling that we send out? Or is that and anything that you see happening.
So I'll start out and I'll let Charlie chime in. There's not always a direct corollary between what you're getting in the market, unfortunately, versus what the steel mills are charging to send the metal out. To give you an example, and I actually did a presentation at the Texas chapter of the SWANA at a state conference this spring. It's Solid Waste Association in North America, it's a professional trade association. Steel prices from September 2020 to September 2021 went up 270%. In other words, it went from about 27 cents a pound to over 80 cents a pound. Significant increase. We did see for a while an increase in steel in the recycling markets. We've seen the recycling markets pull back a little bit. So again, you can see where recycling revenues will climb for a while at your MRF, but we are seeing the prices soften right now for certain commodities. So it's not always a straight linear or parallel relationship. And I don't mean to sound like your stockbroker when you're I recommend investments and they don't go right, but it's that kind of answer. They don't always go in tandem. I'll turn it over to Charlie.
In terms of recycling markets, they're, like you touched on, they fluctuate all over the place. Right now, they're incredibly low. The paper market's dropped by close to $75 a ton in like 2 months. And that's just stuff we can't do anything about it. That's just, the market is what it is. It's more closer tied to like a commodity than really anything that we can control. But like last year in 2021, mostly all through 2021, we had record highs, 2020 was record lows. And right now it feels bad, but we're actually probably a lot closer to what the median is than what we've seen in the past. So.
Thank you.
Okay, any more questions for Dave? Seeing none, thank you, Dave.
Appreciate
Next
it.
thing we have is discuss and act on cost of service analysis results. Kyle, Cynthia, who wants to take this one?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
So I asked that we just limit it to discussion. There is no action at this point because we do have to take all of this into consideration. This is just data that was presented to us. And so we want to mull it over, if you will, and see what the impact is maybe further than 5 years out. You know, we want to look at the very long term respect to all these rates and such. So as far as it goes to an action, no, but perhaps discussion.
Okay, I got a question. You and Charlie and Kyle did your own analysis, so to say, before this all came out. How does yours compare to this one?
Mr. Chair, I'll offer you this, that we knew that we had to standardize rates. That's one thing we first saw right away. And a lot of this stuff predates all of us that are in the management positions now, and we don't know how these rates were derived. And then also, we knew that there would have to be a CPI consideration every year. So perhaps we would have ended up with these numbers. But there is a lot of there's a lot of pressure out there within municipalities being able to afford this. I'll put that out there. So we, you know, we're really reluctant to kind of put information out there related to what the rates should be. We knew that they needed to adjust, but now you're seeing the picture. So we probably would have come up with the same.
Okay, Jerry?
Okay, so with this analysis, we see that we have to raise rates in order to, break even. But we've just signed in with the city, town of Adams, Jackson. Those are all relatively new contracts. We can't do anything on those, can we?
And as I touched on, they'll get the CPI increase. So they'll get at minimum 3% increase every year. And then like I said, the tonnage fee will also go up as our tonnage fee goes up. So, and we do have, I guess, wiggle room in those contracts that I don't think we're gonna be bad off with those contracts. just because they do have the CPI increases already kind of built into the contract.
Okay, Scott,
Did anybody, do cost comparison to the counties around us?
I mean, we haven't, I guess internally, we haven't, I mean, we looked at like regular tipping fees. And I can't tell you like some of the other, and it's different. If you look at other municipalities, some of the bigger municipalities have lower tipping fees, but they're bringing in 3-4 times the amount of garbage. So you're talking like Dane County, Marathon County, Allegheny County. These are bringing in way more waste, I mean, hundreds of thousands of tons more waste than we are. So yes, their tipping fees are lower. But you look at like the closest landfill to us, it's Cranberry Creek landfill in Wisconsin Rapids. And by the end of 2022, they're gonna be pushing $100 a ton. So we're significantly lower than they are. So private landfills were way lower. Municipal landfills were on the higher end, but we're much smaller. And we do have a very rare solid waste department. We're the only one I've ever come across that has a landfill, a collection, like a hauling division, and a recycling center. Nobody in the state at least does all 3 parts. So we just have a lot that we have to kind of balance. There's municipalities that do landfills, there's municipalities that do recycling centers. It's really the collection side of stuff that is pretty rare for a municipality to do.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I'd also like to offer, we do have limitations as far as volume, so we don't have economies of scale as others would have. Or do you want to touch on that, Charlie? Our limitation as far as tonnage outside of the county coming in?
So,
Mhm.
yeah, so I mean, we have limits with our agreement with Strong Prairie as to how much out of county waste we can bring in. And I don't actually think that's like an end all be all. I think they've been pretty open to upping that limit on us. But also, I mean, we don't have a whole lot of out of county that we can reach without making other major, then we're talking more trucks, more employees. Probably longer days. An 8-hour day is kind of limiting on how big we can make our routes. Where you look at a waste management up in Wisconsin Rapids, and they're running, every driver runs a 12-hour day every single day. They start at 3 in the morning, and they go till 3:30 at night or in the afternoon. So our size does limit us on how big we actually can get. But yeah, we do have the Strong Ferry just part as well, on how big, how much out of county waste we get.
So these numbers that we were showing on his page for 2023 with the forecasted revenue, that did not include these contracts that have been signed in the month of October, correct?
I guess. I don't remember.
To clarify, if I may, our forecast includes what the current contracts are. So that's recognizing what you're going to get.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Another thing I'll offer is that what's sitting in our budget right now for 2023 does not consider the increases that are proposed to us.
I'm sorry, I gotta re-ask that question because I don't think I got an answer. In the revenues that Dave forecasted for 2023, did that include the new contracts that were signed with Adams, Town of Adams, Jackson, and those contracts?
Yeah, yes, yeah, all those are included.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
They were just signed. They were just signed.
They actually were signed 2 years ago. No,
Okay.
the only one that was just signed last week was City Adams, so we knew that was coming.
Okay,
We
very
knew
good.
that was, the actual contract was just signed last week.
Okay, John,
Thank you. Looking at the cost service study, I mean, it's good that we see this. The only thing I would suggest is looking at this and we show rate increases in there. And I don't know if we've had any rate adjustments due to the CPI increases that we've seen over the last couple of years with cost of fuel and cost of metals going up. But as the committee looked at this going forward, and this shows a pretty good 5-year roadmap. But my concern is we're not raising it fast enough.
Me too.
And mainly to go to say that is that if you look at the one slide where it shows the under and over rates, and it shows us getting there at the 5th year, but that's after some of those bond payments are paid off. But in the meantime, the next 4 years, we're gonna have over $2 million of tax levy yet going to that. So I would say that if we haven't raised some of the rates for some of our fuel and stuff like that, the committee look at escalating these up even a little bit more. I mean, we see rate increases all the time based on fuels and stuff like that. And if we haven't had the fuel adjustment clauses or anything like that, and to take that into consideration. So that's just the only comment I'd have to make. But I mean, otherwise it shows that what we can do to get there. But, and that also, if we increase that a little faster, helps us build those reserves that we might need for other capital improvements and stuff like that. So thank you.
Mr. Chair, so I'll offer that, we are gonna take that into consideration. There is a shock factor with your municipalities and your citizens, so we need to be prepared, you know, for whatever it is that we recommend. But again, we need time to mull it over, look at the numbers and see, not just 5 years, but what it looks like 10 down the road. So good point though.
Okay, then, Ken,
How long, how much time are they gonna take to mull it over? I mean, a lot of townships are all working on their budgets right now and to be able to come up with their budgets here in the next couple of weeks is gonna be a big thing. In a month they're gonna have their budgets approved. Just like us. Yeah.
okay. End of discussion, need adjourned.
Yeah, I guess not.